What's going on, everybody? When people talk about outlaw motorcycle clubs, they usually picture the Hells Angels, the legends, the icons, the headline makers. But there's another club, a darker one, a harder one. A club that lives the word outlaw in ways the Angels never did. A club born on Route 66, raised in Chicago alleys, and feared across the world. This is the story of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, their rise, their wars, and the brutal code that shaped them. Let's get into it. The origin of an empire. Long before the tattoos, the patches, and the global headlines, the Outlaws started with something simple, a bar on Route 66 in McCook, Illinois. It was 1935. They called themselves the McCook Outlaws Motorcycle Club. Back then, they weren't the one-percenters they'd later become. They were just a group of riders looking for freedom in a world moving too fast. Then World War II hit. Most of the club vanished, some never made it home. When the war ended, the survivors came back changed, harder, harsher, hungrier, for a life that didn't play by rules. To reignite what they'd lost, they held a massive post-war event at Soldier Field in 1946. The purpose, bring the outlaws back from the dead. It worked, and when they rebuilt, they didn't return the same. The transformation and the turn. In the 1950s, everything shifted. The club moved from McCook to Chicago, and with the move came a new identity. The old logo, the winged motorcycle, was scrapped. In its place came the small skull, the outlaw look that would define them for decades. They weren't the McCook Outlaws anymore. They were the Chicago Outlaws. Then the 1960s hit, and the club's reputation turned from rebellious to dangerous. The American Motorcycle Association even tried to ban the word outlaw from race clothing. The club's response? They stitched OMC onto their jackets instead. The message was clear. We are what we are, and we're not hiding. Expansion followed fast. In 1964, two gypsy outlaw clubs patched over. Chicago became the mother chapter. Their identity solidified, and their outlaw status locked in for good. The spread and the shadow. By the 1970s, the Outlaws exploded across the country: Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, New York. It seemed like every year another chapter opened under the black and white skull. In 1977, they hit the global stage, starting their first Canadian chapter when the legendary Satan's Choice patched over. Then came Europe, France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Sweden, the UK, Russia. By the 2000s, the Outlaws weren't just a club. They were a network, over 1,700 members, more than 170 chapters across 13 countries. An empire built from asphalt, brotherhood, and violence. But with power came enemies, the war with the Hells Angels. Every empire meets another empire. For the Outlaws, that enemy was the Hells Angels. The rivalry began in 1969 when an alleged assault on a member's wife triggered a cycle of revenge, one beating. 3 bodies, a quarry in Florida. The message was simple. This wasn't a feud, this was war, and it spread across the US, across Canada, across Europe. Wherever one club planted a flag, the other marched right toward it. The 1990s in the UK were especially brutal. Bulldog Bash Rockers reunion, ambushes, stabbings, shootings. In 2001, an angel was shot 3 times leaving the Bulldog Bash. No witnesses, no statements, just war drums. Then came 2007, the murder of Hells Angel Jerry Tobin on the M40, a shooting that shook biker culture around the world and led to a wave of arrests and retaliation. Europe erupted. Scandinavia saw attacks. Clubhouses were firebombed. Blood spilled for colors, territory, and respect. The Outlaws had become one of the only clubs that could stand toe-to-toe with the Angels and survive. The women of the outlaw world. Inside the Outlaws, women lived by a different code, one shaped by hierarchy, loyalty, and the unspoken rules of a male-dominated world. Some earned respect. Some found a place in the culture. Others were pushed to the margins, their voices drowned out by the club's rigid traditions. Every old lady knew the rules. Be loyal, be careful, understand the club comes first. It was a world of hard men, hard choices, and even harder consequences. And no story showed that more brutally than the story of Crazy Joe, and the dark side of loyalty, Joseph, Crazy Joe. Spaziano was the kind of outlaw who turned whispers into legends, unpredictable, violent, feared even inside his own club. The woman who knew him best, Darcy Faust, described nights of paranoia, pacing, disappearing, returning covered in blood. She saw a man the courts called a killer and the club called a brother. Witnesses from his murder trial, many of them former outlaws, painted the same picture, a man who lived without fear or boundaries. Darcy entered his world thinking she understood outlaw life. She didn't. Once inside, she saw the darker corners most people never witness, the internal violence, the unspoken rules, the suffocating loyalty. Her story became a window into a part of the Outlaws few outsiders ever touch, Legacy of the Skull. Nearly a century after their founding, the Outlaws remain one of the most powerful, feared, and misunderstood clubs on Earth. They've survived war, expansion, crackdowns, betrayal, and bloodshed. They built chapters across continents, fought rivals for decades, weathered everything law enforcement threw at them, and through it all, one motto followed them: God forgives. Outlaws don't.